Welcome to another edition of our Fireside Chat, brought to you by Ways to Love Your Money. My name is Katie Steck. I'm here with Elisabeth Dawson and Grace Castillo to talk about uncertainty and decision making during these COVID times. We know that last year or so has maybe halted some of your plans, and maybe you're feeling unsure about how to move forward with a business or a personal decision. And we just wanted to take some time to talk about how to navigate these things when there is so much unknown. So if you have any questions on this topic and you want our experts to talk about it, please put them in the chat. I'll make sure any of our questions I see get answered tonight. If you do think that they are too personal, I'll put a link to have a one-on-one consultation after this as well, so we can get you scheduled with Elisabeth or Grace. So without any further ado, I'll let Elisabeth introduce herself and talk a little bit about what we do and what a certified money coach can do for you.
Well, hello, I'm Elisabeth Dawson. I'm the founder and CEO of Copia Wealth Management and Insurance Services and Copia Wealth Management Advisors Incorporated. And we're a firm here in San Diego, but we love to reach everyone out there and give great education. Now we're in a virtual world due to this pandemic, and it's hard to get used to, but I guess it's something that's probably going to be here to stay. But you know, this is our goal and our mission. Every single time we have a fireside chat, or we have the opportunity to educate people. That's the biggest source of wealth you can have, is education. And, you know, under these uncertain times right now, talking to people about their money anxieties, money concerns, decision-making process, it's had a big impact on us. And if it hasn't had an impact on you so that you think so right now, it is coming. So I think that this opportunity to talk with Grace and I and Katie, it comes at a perfect time. It's a pivotal time, because I think people are starting to imagine, what is their life going to look like maybe come summer, or is it going to take another year? What is it going to look like? This is, you know, anyone that's alive today, pretty much, this is the first time anyone's gone through something like this. You know, 1917 was the last major pandemic that pretty much shut down society, economics, things of that nature. It was just horrific. There were other things that happened along the way, but the bigger impact to compare, and that's why we have a mission and passion to educate about opportunity and how to maybe process the ideas and thoughts about making good financial decisions, or a decision at all. So Katie asked me to kind of elaborate a little bit on what is a certified money coach. Well, it's very different than a financial coach. A financial coach, which is what we do as well, we talk about the relationship of how money works and how to create wealth and how to do it on a disciplined fashion. But the money coaching is a very different platform. When I first started that process, I was kind of surprised, because it was so different. It's really the psychology and the behavior of our relationship with money. We spoke with someone earlier today, and it's a son of a couple, and it was interesting because he's so involved in trying to help make sure that mom and dad have what they need, and they depend on him to do so. It's a lot of pressure for a 40-something single guy. But all in all, it is about either cultural difference or cultural influence or family dynamic, because your early relationship with money was something that you saw when you were a child. How your parents dealt with money, maybe siblings, maybe aunts and uncles. Maybe through your working life, you had influences of relationships that might have mentored you, that maybe changed or paradigm shifted you. Today, we're in an innovation age, and the innovation age is about educating us, about helping us make the best decisions possible. So if we have underlying concerns about how we, like to talk about money, how we don't like to talk about money, the one thing here that I know is everybody's working hard for money, but how is their relationship with that money? And so many people, unfortunately, are suffering from not having good money habits. And also the psychology around what we do today has a positive or negative effect on our future. We have to measure that. But it's also working through some of these hangups that we have about money, because money doesn't have to control you. It doesn't have to create anxiety. It can come from a place of, opportunity, abundance, joy, and the money coaching process really is something for you to get to know who you are and how you think, and then develop and grow that. And I think it all goes in with the work that we've done, for the past 22 years, being dedicated to the financial services industry and educating people about how to make better financial decisions that will create wealth whether it's with liquidity or opportunity or tax mitigation, or just, darn right doing something, which is the best part to start. Sometimes the biggest decision that people have is the ability to even start. Always something comes up and gets in the way. So we don't like to encourage procrastination. We love to encourage education and taking action. And tonight's your opportunity to kind of hear some perspective. And my dear friend who is here with us tonight too, Grace Castillo, is amazing. She's a beautiful friend of mine. She's also a business coach and a personal coach of mine, but she's really changed the lives of so many people. And just that relationship with anxiety. I'm not going to steal her thunder or tell you, her story, because I think she's got an amazing story to tell. But my hope is that even if it's just one person that we help tonight with a different perspective to create more peace with decision making versus the true anxiety of like, oh my gosh, the world is falling apart and nothing's ever going to get better again. We need to find the glimmer of hope and really truth in our decision-making process, and set ourselves up for true success. And failure is never an option. So again, Grace, thank you so much for being here. Katie, thank you for introducing me. And Grace, take it away.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the invite. Well, I'm happy to be here. I am Grace Castillo. I have 15 years of experience in working in the science of human behavior. And at the end, this career and this profession of the science of human behavior takes a lot of course, what Elisabeth mentioned already, which is working with our mindset, with our mental health, as with our psychology, as well as with our emotions. Because at the end, when we master both of those, then we can create the life we desire. We can have the results that we desire. We can have everything around all aspects of life in a harmony or in alignment that we desire. So that's the beauty of it. And that's a short way of telling it because it's so wide. But as I mentioned, success in every area that we want, it depends on how we are precisely on our emotions and in our mind. And that's part of the things that we will be speaking this tonight. So I'm sure that we will take something that will serve you, because we're both very passionate about this, and I know that you'll take something from this. But overall, that's what I've been doing over 15 years. And it's, I mentioned, it's focused to wherever you want to focus. But as I always love to say, it's highly important for the human to be in a great state so we can perform greatly in all the areas of their life. So that's been the passion of mine. And of course, one of the great things and the beauty of this as well is that that when serving, we grow as well together, right? And what I always mention as well within all this is that it's highly important that we talk our talk, right? And we walk our walk, because it's having results for ourselves is highly important. It's how is it that we are able to support other people? It's because we really know, not just by the knowledge, not just by books or by studies, but by experience and by making situations transform completely in our own lives, but as well for others. So it's going to be a pleasure. I'm just happy to be here and ready to enjoy this journey that we'll be sharing for this hour. And we thank you in advance as well for being here and having this interest to get something from it.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
so Katie, now you have control of the mic.
So Grace, I know one of your primary sayings is to not allow your external world to affect your internal world. Can you talk a little bit more about this?
Yes, it's not to, I love this one because it's important not to allow the external world exactly to affect the internal world. This is I could go like for hours with this, but I'm going to make it short. And it literally has, let's say, two ways to place it or to put it, is that, and to simplify it as well, is, let's say we are born, right? And we're born with two other things that we tend to forget that brings us situations after in life. It's like we're born, but within this life, we have two things for sure that will happen. Within the life, we will have challenges and situations continuously because it comes with part of life. Here is your life. It comes in a little bag, and you get entered into this world, and here's your little, life. This life comes with this little bag. This little bag has one, situations and challenges that you will have in able to grow. And the other one is you will have continuous change and opportunity of transformation. It will be your choice. So once that we are, aware of, yes, I was given a life and nobody said it was going to be all roses, pink, and everything's at peace and everything's great, right? We came already with this life knowing that we will have challenges and situations, and that we can have an opportunity of change, of transformation. So if we know that our life is continuously transformation and change and situations, what if we just take it in another perspective and widen our view and able to see it, not just, as I mentioned, not seeing it just like this, very limited, but actually start seeing life from here, right? And when we lose sight of this, that life is that, then that's when we become, we start struggling with life, because it's like, why do I have to have challenge? Why do things have to be changing? Why can't things be permanent when life in essence is impermanent, right? Mm-hmm. So once we just totally accept that we have those, then we can make peace with life and saying, okay, here's a challenge, instead of saying, oh my God, I always say, see it like, here it comes, an opportunity of growth. It's like just preparing and prepping my mind and priming my mind to know that this is an opportunity of growth for myself. I may not have total clarity of why it's happening at that moment, but I know that it will be something after, right? So that's like the first part of that answer to that question. And the other one is, when you know this part that I just mentioned, then you get to the other part, which is honoring then your life, right? When you honor your life, then you know that this is my responsibility and my power. Why am I going to give away, my power and allow everything, all the noises, the distractions, the obstacles, the time wasters, all these things to take away my power, my focus, my thrive, my life, then that doesn't happen, because I'm aware of this. So then I honor myself. And that's when we can really become strong-minded, strong in our emotions, and say, the external is not going to take away from inside of myself. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think you said a lot.
I know this is kind of taking us a little bit off of schedule, but if I could actually elaborate on what Grace just said, and maybe even ask Grace just a little teeny other question to really explain, because the majority of people today, if they've never met someone like Grace, which is an amazing person that sees things completely in a different perspective, just the thought and idea that we're born in this world, we have a mission, it's pretty much prescribed to us. Everyone's going to have a different mission. They're going to have different opportunities, different things that they see, things that create a lot of chaos and hysteria. But it's a perspective, right, Grace? It's a perspective of how you view what's coming to you. It could be the end of the world, and you're thinking, oh my gosh. But one of the things that I know for a fact that you have taught me over many years now is that don't have it come at you as something that's going to ruin your world. Oh my gosh, it's going to kill me. No, it's, what is the opportunity that I'm going to learn from, and how am I going to be even a better version of me going through it? And then becoming better for, my community, my world, people that I talk to, people that I influence, just even for my own personal self. That is really the impact of this statement that you just said, Grace.
Definitely, because we, as I mentioned, it's an opportunity of growth. And I know that it sounds like, yes, it sounds, easier than, like people say, easier said than done. However, once we are really have that clarity, that awareness, and we accept that it is gonna give, it's gonna get us back something, but we can miss those opportunities as well. And that's why it's so important to become aware of it, that it is an opportunity. So if we become aware that we have that as a choice, then we can actually be enriching ourselves, because how many situations do we have? Like in a week, and that is like, or in a day.
Endless, yeah.
It's like, so we should be actually used to this, because that's part of life. But when we become, friends with challenge, then we can grow so much. And I was able to validate that. And when I learned that part, like in my early 20s, I could validate that information because that had been my life. And when I started making friends with that, by personal experience as well, my life really started to transform completely. And I stopped feeling more like life was giving it to me, and I started more like, oh, this is an opportunity. And that's when it comes perspective. That's when it comes about psychology, really changing how we're viewing things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
Okay,
Elizabeth, how
Mm-hmm.
has uncertainty impacted the way your clients, and this is a question for Grace too, impacted the way our clients have been making decisions?
It's been interesting over the past, I'm going to just even say a year. We're just about a year on when the shutdown really occurred, which is so out of our, nature to have even ever even imagine that something like this could happen, right? We're all such independent people, and, life experience, people connection, hugging and kissing, all those things are a normal part of our day to day. And then it was all of a sudden halted and stopped. So initially, for us, because, we are comprehensive financial planners. So we look at every financial decision someone is making and the cause and effect of what's happening in the environment. And so initially between February and March, the market decline was very stressful for many people. And there's nothing to really compare a market decline and what the emotion does to people, what it does to us too, because we have a responsibility to our consumer to help them create wealth, and we don't ever want to lose money. We can't say that we would never lose money. We just want to have strategies that will actually create resources for people to recover in a very quick amount of time versus what happens in the normal world. So regardless of saying that, the emotional tie that we saw, I believe, Katie, and you could probably elaborate on this too, is that we didn't lose a step. We had to, for the business, first and foremost, it was basically turning it into a virtual world. How do I take it from the office, the brick and mortar, and bring all of the systems and procedures of internet and access to documentation or information? How can we bring that into our homes? Kind of like what we're doing tonight. How could we do that and do it successfully and professionally? And in the beginning, let me tell you, we were calling our clients where other people weren't hearing anything from anybody that was basically involved with them for their financial well-being. And I think that was a paradigm shift because we've promised that to our client, regardless of what the situation is, because there's always a situation. Every year I always say so much happens in 2 weeks, let alone a year or 2 years or 5. So there's these things that's really, and this is also something that Grace has taught me over the years. It's how we receive the information, how we react to it. And so putting that in perspective of our consumer who's worried like, oh my gosh, is everything gone? No. What is the strategy? What is the plan? And I think when you can give certainty to an uncertain situation, it really made a incredible bond with our clients that we're privileged to work with, and help them succeed beyond what they thought they could even do, as well as we were fulfilling our promise. Now, at the beginning, Katie, you might even want to say something about this. At the beginning, people were scared to death to even have a conversation.
Yeah, that's true. Mm-hmm.
And
I think
when
people thought it was very temporary, and this will go away, and kind of like what Grace was saying before, it'll go back to the way things were, and I can live my life the way it's always been.
Yeah. And they thought like in 2 weeks we'd be back, to normal, or 3 weeks, and then it turned into, 4 or 5 months, and now it's like almost a year, and that will mess with your psychology. For us, we were very fortunate because we were extremely busy, because we wanted to give the promises and the strategies of what would continue to work for our clients. But what I say, and I'm going to actually pull out something personal here, that eventually the chaos or what everyone's feeling, even if you have stayed busy and you don't feel it, you're going to feel it. And I experienced something, in the past couple weeks where I didn't think it was going, I was fighting it off because I was so busy and I've got an amazing team, but I started feeling the pangs of depression. And that's not something anyone prides themselves on, but we're human. And I think more than ever, this is why I was so empowered and wanting to have tonight happen and have Grace here too, because it's all about how you receive the information, how you process it, and how it's going to turn you into a better person after, or a better situation, or at least having a voice. But again, it creeps in. It doesn't matter, if you think you're the strongest person in the world, which I'm a pretty darn strong person, but there are times when it just kind of hits the wall. I think we related to our client that way because we understood what they were starting to go through. Some start a little bit earlier than others, and then some after. But we know who needs that attention more than others, but it's the constant communication and telling them we aren't going anywhere. And we haven't disappeared. If anything, we've brought more and more education out there to the public, because that's the peace of mind. And if, like I said, if any one of these things actually makes the difference in your mindset, wow.
Yes.
So,
Grace, what about you? What are you seeing with your clients?
Well, the good thing is that they have a great coach. So this is a follow-up, right? So the thing that I've seen has been the uncertainty, of course, the lack of taking decision and not feeling completely motivated as they were. I serve as that Jiminy Cricket, as the conscious, partnering with them to bring precisely just that self-awareness, that clarity, enable for them to observe themselves and take the actions that are needed. And more than that, so they can realign themselves to their true selves. Let me give you an example. Let's say that in that uncertainty is bringing clarity, because in many times what they see is just a lot of things happening. But when there's a lot of things happening that are unknown, what we're missing in reality is clarity. So it's taking them back to see things for what they are, not worse than what they are. And but the main thing has been uncertainty, overwhelm, lack of taking decision. And definitely my job has been to remind people before the pandemic, what were your goals? What were your ambitions? What was your purpose? What were you thriving on? Because that has not disappeared. We're just in this little bubble that has, something that has happened. However, if we go to history, as I normally do to get facts, is this happened 100 and plus years, which was the Spanish flu, right? Which is 1918 to 1920. So that means that it took around 2 years, or 2 years and a little bit more, because I think it happened by the end of 1917 or something like that.
I think you're right.
Yeah. So the whole point is that I researched them all. Okay, happened around 2 and a little bit more of years, meaning that if that happened, that means that I started making numbers in my mind. Because I look for patterns, right? As a coach, I look for behavior patterns, not just in humans, but in history, because that gives us information that is highly valuable for today. And I said, so if that took us around 2 and a little bit more of years, meaning that our current science and technology will take us probably for this pandemic to be over maybe in a year, or a year and a little bit at most. So that was just myself making those type of things, those type of equations. So that brought me precisely to my clients and bringing the facts of our past, patterns and things that might happen, so we could be mentally processing things very differently, and knowing that not necessarily we're going to go to this sameness, of things going to the back. We're going forward. However, having clarity is highly important for all human beings, because fear, all this fear, at the end, everything is fear. And then we have uncertainty or stress or anxiety or overwhelm, but it comes from fear of the unknown, right? So my job has been to bring clarity, but their own clarity for them, which the answers are within ourselves, right? Because when we start asking ourselves important things and fact checking ourselves and knowing that we're here and we will survive, because it's our survival instincts as well that gives us all those emotions. So when we start really digesting and separating things in our mind and processing our emotions, just makes us breathe again. And then people then start taking actions in a different way, remembering what we were thriving before, because that has not ended. Our life is not in pause. It's not, it cannot be like I wake up every morning and my life is not in pause. We can still continue to grow and move forward, which is that exactly what Elisabeth mentioned, because we get into this funks, sometimes we can feel stagnated somewhere. And when we feel stagnated or just going around the same thing, that can cause us some type of mental imbalance, which take us to this little disalignments, I may call them.
I just want to.
And I think it's also to say too, we're all human.
Yes, exactly.
We can all relate to one another.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's important, because sometimes you think people are infallible. We're all infallible.
No, we are all.
And again, why I was really passionate about wanting to have this, this night to be able to, just share a little bit about ourselves and how maybe it might help you.
Yeah. And I think I just want to share what we just got in the chat, some input from one of our business owners too, who's dealing with this every day. And he said that what has really worked for him, and as we all have referral-based businesses, is that he likes to reach out and engage that's not business related, and just really be there for his clients. It's about how he can help serve you and your friends and family, and today and tomorrow in the future, and show the human side of any type.
Yes, connect.
And just emphasizing that working remotely, I think this last year, I think has shown that you don't have to be in front of a person to really have an impact and
correct. And that's exactly what we're missing, the human connection, and that part is beautiful. That was exactly a beautiful thing mentioned, because that's what keeps us alive and going. It's how are you doing? Like a quick call or something just keeps us alive and going forward. Yeah, that's beautiful.
Well, and that's where I've said, thank God for Zoom. But then I've heard people say, oh my gosh, when this is over, I don't want to do another Zoom call at all. But this is at least bringing us across, many miles. And funny little tidbit of fact, my uncle's 80th birthday, which we were supposed to all get together and go on a little cruise with last year, we couldn't because of COVID. So we did, I don't know how many people were on there, 30, 40 people. We did a whole Zoom call and everybody got to wish him a happy birthday. And he goes, that was the best birthday of my life. But it was just that one little thing. It had nothing to do with money. It just had everything to do with that human connection. I actually see more family members that don't live near me more through Zoom than I have ever in my life. So there's a lot of pluses to be taken from, maybe not just pluses, but blessings that, this pandemic or COVID have given us too, but it's for us to choose to see what those opportunities and blessings are.
And it's going to be a healthy integration of both technology nowadays with that human touch and that human one-on-one.
Elisabeth, I want to circle back to kind of our the money coaching process and what you were talking about before. So in our industry, we see a lot of people who deal with money shame, or shaming themselves for past financial decisions or the current situation that they're in, to the point that they feel that they are incapable of making changes. Emotions, self-worth, and a sense of safety have been a huge impact on how we interact with our money. So as a certified money coach, how are you helping people overcome this?
I think the first part is the psychology of that. So many people are afraid to even ask for a little advice or help, or speak to a financial person that's an expert in, whatever field that they're interested in. There is a shame. And what I want to tell you is that there's no shame in anything you've done, because where you are today, there are people that are younger than you that are, clawing and scratching to get where you are at right now. There's a famous saying I always have. I don't know who I ever heard it from, but I just started saying it many, many years ago. But there's a professional for everything. And the right professional for you when it comes to money decisions or your relationship with money, which is a completely different parameter, they need to make sure that when they're conveying that information to you, that you haven't done anything wrong. We just weren't taught. We weren't taught how to have a great relationship with money. It's not about worshiping money. It's about, okay, I've worked very hard for this. It's not about what you're entitled to for that money. It's just about how you make the decisions with it. So your parents may have been could have been from the generation of what we call the Great Depression, and they basically, or this might be your grandparents, where their money, they became so tight with their money and they were so afraid of it. And my mother was European, so there would be money like stashed in a suitcase or a mattress or in the freezer. It was just in just strange places, because that was a generation that didn't trust banks because they thought banks or Wall Street were going to fail them. But the average consumer didn't even really understand the concept of Wall Street back then. So all of these pieces create a lineage in our DNA. It's not just that I look like my parents. I also have certain traits in my DNA that I think like them, or they influenced me when I was growing up. So think about the impact. This may not be your fault at all if you don't have that cohesive relationship with money. That's okay. Anything can be changed. Anything can be introduced to you. And again, like Grace is saying too, if it's about how you receive the information. I'll never tell you that you've done anything wrong. If anything, all we're trying to do is create solutions that will make it all better, and then empower you with more knowledge and education. That's why we wrote the book, Wealth by Design. That's why we, produce the show, Ways to Love Your Money. And if you don't know enough about it, there is a website called waystoloveyourmoney.com. There's a YouTube channel. There's all these different pieces. There's so many places that you can get this amazing amount of information. But it's to educate you. We are in an innovative time in our lives where that innovation has created so many connections to internet, so many connections to information that you can pull out of the thin blue air. And this wasn't available to us several years ago. So there's so many self-taught people, but it's about really encompassing all of your thoughts, your ideas about money, what your goals are. I think when we introduce the concept of goals, it scares people because they're thinking, how in the world am I going to accomplish a goal when I can barely live on what I'm bringing in right now? There is so much money that's available to you based on having a better thought process, more valuable information. And again, if I refer back to my book, Wealth by Design, in the beginning, I talk a lot about everybody wants your money before you've actually earned it. They can't wait for you to have it in your bank account so you can go and spend it. But who has their hands in that money before you? In most cases, it's usually the government, the IRS, the state that you live in. So, and then we have all these broken down expenses that go to what? Financial institutions, to debt, to things we tell ourselves that we have to have. But psychologically, why do we have to have it? There was a question on our podcast last week, and it was about how can you help me not overspend what I bring in per month? And it's logical, right? Don't overspend than what you bring in. But what has happened is one of the financial institutions, or you can say bank, but it's more of a financial institution, they're capitalists just like any other business owner, but they are in the business of saying, okay, here, you're 18 years old, they're on your high school campus, or they're in the, the college campus, and they're offering you credit cards that if you didn't even have income, you would never be able to qualify for. But they're offering this to you because you're a student and they know that you're going to be creating money of some kind. And one of the biggest fallacies in the past is said, oh, well, I'm trying to build credit with this little credit card. That's one of the most misused ideas. There's so many other ways that you can build credit, but people just don't know. Paying interest and fees to a financial institution called a credit card, and then overspending the income that comes in for you each and every month, eventually something's going to hit the wall. So if you become more educated about your relationship with money, how you make decisions with money, who's influenced you, there's so many different money archetypes. Could you be the tyrant? Oh boy, you're the controller. Are you the victim? So many people play the victim and you really don't need to. Or are you the fool? Or truly what we're trying to become is what they call the money magician. And the money magician is really that warrior that, you're a fighter, you're building your wealth, you're creating your future, or you're creating your current existence. But yet the magician is the one that says, kind of like Grace, how you receive it and how you process it and how you, whether it's something you like or don't like, it's about how you internally, react to it. So it could be something so complicated, like, it might be a bill, it might be a health situation. All these things have solutions before they happen, but you have to be willing to be proactive to understand what the consequences of not planning in advance for. So again, I'll never tell you did anything wrong. If anything, we'll do everything we can to help your relationship with money even better. And it is important. And if you would actually like to look at the Money Coaching Institute, that is where I became certified. And it just complements the work that we do, because the psychology of money it could be crippling for people. Every time there's a couple that comes in, there's always one that says, I'm the money person, and the other one that says, I don't like it at all. Well, that's a disconnect. Everybody's a team. And you might just be an individual that you're managing your own money, but boy, I'm working hard to make it. It's great. But then I have nothing to show for it. Some of the wealthiest people I've ever met have nothing to show for the money that they make. And that's sad, because if you're blessed, respect it. But if not, how do we create it? You don't have to make a lot of money to create a lot of wealth.
And if this is interesting to you, you have plenty of copies. So give us a call. I'm going to put our link in the chat too, to set up a consultation if is triggering any more interest for you.
Yes.
But Ollie will move on.
It's Grace's turn for a question.
So, what is one piece of advice that you have given people, or that you yourself use when dealing with uncertainty and fears?
Ooh, I love that. That one is totally fact check. It's a very practical one. It's part of, like, remember, it's like I mentioned earlier, observe things for what they are, not worse than what they are. But how do you do that? Fact check. You have to fact check. If this can, like the example of the pandemic, I know I shared this exactly with Elisabeth. It's when the pandemic hit, and it was like, oh, grocery shopping, right? So I went to the grocery shopping, and I was like, there's nothing here, and I said, okay, let's fact check. And as I mentioned, okay, has this happened before? Would I be able to survive with what I have at home? I started just crashing all my doubt, my fear, my whatever emotions I was feeling. I didn't just shut them down. I was like, okay, let me feel it, and then ask a question. Like, question things, as in, would I be able to survive? Would I be able to really, with what I have at home? Would I be okay with what I have in my bank, like, for a year? Or because I know, like, I immediately went back to history, right? Will I be uncomfortable for a year? It's going to be challenging, different, and uncomfortable. Yes. Okay, Grace, then get ready for uncomfort. Okay. Will I be able to survive? Yes. Okay. Will I be able? Okay. So I was okaying myself as I was fact checking. So when we have something that is intense, that is of that just takes us to uncertainty, unknowingness, it's important to fact check, yourself, and ask questions so you can okay yourself and enable to move forward. So that's like a one practical one, because I have many. However, that one is just very practical and very fast. That it can take you a minute even.
Yeah, I like that.
Well, Grace, you have so many great points about that too. I mean, even just the fact, look at the innovation that's been created through this pandemic. I mean, DoorDash is crazy, right? Went public, a couple weeks ago. We have Instacart. I mean, and I'll just speak for myself. My husband and I went through COVID. We survived. It was rough. We still deal with some stuff, but we're thankful to be alive. But, having resources like Instacart, I had groceries coming to me. I had people reaching out, family and friends, saying, is there anything I can get for you? But the freedom to be able to say, oh my gosh, I can have some groceries delivered. And now since then, I can have groceries delivered if I'm so busy, whatever it might be. There's been innovation and creativity and a lot of prosperity that's been created during this time. Of course. And wow, I mean, if that can happen, so can everything else.
Exactly. And that was actually one of the fact checks that I had for myself. Will I be able to travel? Because we had a lot of traveling. I'm like, no, that's okay. Will I be like, I asked about my business. Okay. Will I have to innovate and able to change things? Yes. So it's more, it's just checking yourself and then going to them, fact checking and whatever it doesn't, it's a no or yes, you just work with and you have a plan now. You have an action, and you have clarity of what you need to start redesigning.
Okay, well, we have about 20 more minutes, so I'm going to switch to some audience questions.
Okay.
All right, so here we go. This is for both of you. I have a business that has had to open and close multiple times over the last year. I'm tired of putting my life on hold. What are your suggestions?
I'm going to refer back to Grace. I'm going to say fact check. Can you survive any further? Have some of the government opportunities like the Paycheck Protection Program, the EIDL loans, some of the grants that are available. Have you exhausted all those resources to see if that could help you sustain this very uncomfortable, stressful, time of opening and closing? Is that a possibility? If you haven't exercised those things, those are probably questions that you should ask us. We could point you in the right direction. We don't do the loans ourselves or anything like that, but we have great professionals that we align with that can introduce you to that. But it reminds me of a couple of our clients. They won't be able to come back. And it's really sad. I remember early on in the pandemic that one of our clients said, I'm just going to claim bankruptcy. They had gotten a big, loan through, I think it was the PPP. And they just said, there's just no way, the type of business we have, you have to have it under certain conditions and we can't provide that. And that's the sad, but there's also been opportunity, even in that conversation that story I'm bringing up, they already saw it. They said, economically, we're not going to be able to do this. We're either going to lose our home or we're going to sell it. And it's at the high. And they did that. And they basically made sure that when they walked away from everything, even though they had to mentally be okay with it, which we never want anyone to have to go through that, but it's sometimes not our decision or suggestion, or if anything, it's really just a virtual hug at this point to give them encouragement. But see if you've exercised everything possible. And if that's the only end result, if that business has to be shut down, how else can you recreate or reinvent yourself? Right. And that place you might find yourself, because business owners here's a dynamic. They're entrepreneurs, they're always thinking of ideas. They're always getting creative. And, I think if you can put that creative hat on that got you into the successful business prior to the pandemic, put that back in your front window versus your rear view window, and see if it can actually create some thoughts and ideas. Again, a lot of businesses have figured that out. They would have never been successful, let alone this pandemic hit. But Grace, I think you have perspective too. You work with quite a few business owners and corporations and things like that. So have you had a different experience or any suggestion?
Yes, well, many of them was just a lot of fact checking, right? A lot of going through a smart decision, as in, is it from the internal world to the external world? To see if it was still in alignment, because business is a very important area of our life, but it's not completely the whole life. And what I mean by this is that it's important to check everything else in within your life, as you mentioned with these clients that you mentioned, has to do with the quality of life, the relationships, the money, all the circumstances around it. It's important to check that. Is it going to be worth it holding on or trying hard? Or is it time to just let it go because of the circumstances and just reinvent yourself, innovate something else, and just start all over? Because the one thing we cannot do, and I would plead that person, is do not put your life in hold. And do not put your life in hold, because you cannot put your life in hold because it's not the only thing you have. And this is when, of course, something that is hefty, as finances, it's so important in life. I understand that. However, we cannot lose time in going forward, in transforming, in changing, and going forward. Because if we stay there and we stagnate, then that's when we are allowing other lower vibrancy emotions to come our way, and we're just gonna continue to get stuck where we're at. Mhm.
Kind of something that just kind of popped into my head as you were saying that, Grace, is, the past year and even going forward, it's just time to dig deep.
Yes, it
You
is.
know, you're worth it. Your family's worth it. Your legacy is worth it. Don't give up, and don't let this be a crippling factor that you can't make a decision to thrive and be successful. I think a lot of us last year in March, April, we had no idea how this was going to turn out. We didn't.
No.
Yeah, and we just had to drive through. We had to dig deeper. We had to be more and more committed than ever to get, to help people make peaceful, mindful decisions about what was going to affect them in their life, and make them feel like, gosh, I've got a great story. I don't have anything to worry about. Those were the majority of our phone calls, which were great, and meetings, and just having that good story kind of conversation. It's just reiterating what you planned actually is working.
Correct. It's more a holistic way of seeing things, as well as being more intentional from now on forward.
Yeah.
So that would help a lot.
All right, next question. I have a couple questions that go together, so I'm going to ask together and you can answer them in pieces. I'm in a lot of debt because I've lost my job. Where do I go from here? And to piggyback that, another question is, before the pandemic, I had done a great job stopping using my credit cards, but now I've started using them again. What is your advice for credit card use during these times?
You want to go first, Grace, or you want me to?
Well, I can go into, I will always go first for behavior, like that's exactly what I do in behavior and mindset. I see, the part of perspective, it's always there. It's how do we see things, right? How are we taking in the information? And I mentioned, like in this times, is it necessary to use them because otherwise you couldn't survive? The answer probably is yes, because it's in the question. Okay, so if it's yes, then it's okay. The point is not seeing things like that, because we have to see the different perspectives of it. Of course, financially, it's always better not to have them, so you're not paying interest, etc. However, when it's a survival need, it's important to make peace with it so you can actually be at a flow and knowing that it's not permanent, it's temporary. It's these moments of challenge that will take you that. And the perspective is, okay, that could be a motivator. I have debt. And how can you see debt? You can see it debt with what type of behavior? As in, I'm using it just for survival, but it's different when you just use it for overspending, right? So here, if it's for survival, it's important to know that it's okay. It's not permanent, it's temporary. You're supporting yourself with it, and that can take you to thrive then on seeing how am I gonna go, beyond this and able to grow, to go forward. Is how do I see this opportunity of growth, right? Because financially, we know there's so many facets to debt. And I can even relate to this when I was younger. And I was forming myself, and I was paying for college, and I was paying for trainings and other psychology trainings, and the live coaching school. And I was doing so many trainings, and I was at a point around 25K, in debt and credit cards. But then I saw it, and that's when I learned, wow, I have 25K. Awesome. I was like, okay, I'm at 25K. But this is my investment for the education and for the passion, what I'm going to do. So, wow, I've invested this amount of money. Scary at the same time, but I'll know I'll get this, done. And pretty much that gave me so much energy and motivation to, within, 2 years and 8 months, I think I paid it all off. But it was just that charge of how do we choose to see things? And I knew that was not permanent. I told myself that, and that was the best investment. And I felt so wealthy inside. So when you feel wealth and abundance within yourself and not seeing yourself at a lack state, as just a moment and a support, then things can change so rapidly. This is just a moment. This is just a support. It's like a life support, that you have right now. And that's okay for now. So that's the part of behavior, but I know that Elisabeth has the other facet and the other view as well.
Yeah, but I think I can dovetail on what you're saying, Grace, because the power in what you just said is saying it's temporary. I think that the hardest thing that we see is when we talk to people, whether it's pandemic or not, when they have this constant behavior of credit card usage and it's above and outside of their income that they receive, that's the hardest part we see, because everyone, we just went through a new year. One of the biggest, New Year's Eve resolutions is to get out of debt. And so much the mission is to help people get out of debt and see what it feels like to say, I do not owe a financial institution my hard-earned money. And like to dovetail on what you said, Grace, about this is temporary. I think just like a goal or just like a wish list item, or when it comes to saying, I really want to not have this codependent relationship on credit, you have to give yourself kind of like a timeline, an expiration date that you're going to shift and change. Because the sad thing I see, especially in our society, is that it could be someone wants to refinance their mortgage and they pay off their credit card debt through the mortgage, but they haven't changed their behavior when it comes to spending on credit cards. And then it's like a cycle. Every few years they keep doing it. And that's not the answer. The answer is you can do the refinance to restructure, but restructure your mindset. And restructure your mindset to say, we'll always ask, sometimes we'll have people that say, well, I spend on average about $2,000 a month for credit card usage. And they give themselves that limit, or it's $3,000 or $5,000, $10,000. And I say, well, 5 years ago, or even 3 years ago, how much were you putting on that credit card? They said, well, is it the same, or was it less, or was it more? And the majority of the time they'll tell us, oh, it was far less. And what's happening is with the credit card usage, and these financial institutions make it very appealing. And we always tell ourselves, I'll just pay it off. But what happens when you can't pay it off? What's the plan, right? But what has happened to us to kind of have that codependency on these financial institutions to basically create something that's maybe something we tell ourselves we think we need, versus this survival mode, then those expenses, just like inflation, everything gets more expensive. And that is basically taking away your ability and sacrificing the ability for you to have money, or to save money, or to create wealth with it for opportunities, or liquidity for opportunities. And I think it's just, again, if we're talking about pandemic only and it's a temporary solution for a very short period of time, and you really can't have a skill set training change, then I get it. But there still has to be a strategy about what you visually see is the outcome of getting out of that debt. I love it when people really invest in themselves for education, because the education has brought them to the education and knowledge and expertise of where they're at. And if they recognize that debt as that, and not the albatross, or gosh, the school or the college, whatever it was that you maybe invested money in, but you're not using it, that's the saddest part. But if it's something that really changes your life, oh my gosh, that's empowering. That should be something that I'm thankful for every day. But it's the relationship when it comes to, one of the number one biggest addictions this year, or from last year, because people were at home, is buying on Amazon. And I'm not trying to say anything bad about Amazon. I buy things on Amazon, but it's become this like Christmas Day effect, where having a box delivered every day, or as many days a week, it's like this emotional high, and we're telling ourselves we have to buy all these things. And it was kind of interesting. We were on a call with a couple, and they go, oh, it must be Amazon time, or Amazon delivery time, because the dog started to bark every day at the same time. The dog started to bark, and it becomes this different kind of behavior. But do you absolutely need everything that you're purchasing? The answer is absolutely not. And I know that the savings rate in the United States has actually increased because of the pandemic, but the spending, or the new addiction, instead of it being the coffee habit, the Starbucks habit, or just immediate gratification, it's changed into this new immediate gratification of, purchases and deliveries happening like, so many days a week. And it's exciting to get it because it's like, oh, it's just like Christmas. But again, you have to ask yourself, do you really want to continue to create Amazon more wealth, or do you want to start taking advantage of that and creating wealth for yourself? So the long and the short is, yes, if it's a temporary thing and this is the only way you're going to get through it, see if there's any opportunities that will help you get through it, or put a timeline on it to say, you know what, I'm going to get out of that right away and I have a plan. Instead of saying, gosh, I'm going to just let this absorb my life and I'm not going to change. And, you know, I think, Katie, you met with someone yesterday that said, you know, I needed that reset because they forgot what the purpose of that money, you know, our society wants us to be codependent on it. We shouldn't want to be. We want to create our own opportunities.
Exactly. And as you mentioned, being purpose, you know, using it with purpose is living a life with intention. So what is really, when we're spending, what's the purpose or intention of it?
Bingo. If we all just got a little bit more knowledgeable about that and why we make some decisions, it's amazing. Man.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question.
Yep.
Okay, over the last year, we have seen many beloved local businesses have to close their doors for good. Do you have any advice for those that are having to start over?
I'm going to let Grace talk about this one. I think because this is right up your alley, Grace.
Yes. Well, to start over. In reality, to start over, I've had a lot of clients that actually had to start over in many ways, from businesses to broken marriages to so many things. And as I just mentioned earlier, looking at your life in a wide vision is necessary. When we feel either on a funk, or we feel a little bit lost, or that we lost motivation, or that something is just coming down in our life, as in business, as in money, as in relationship, absolutely everything is interdependent. Absolutely everything. So this is when the moment comes to check in our life completely, as I mentioned, holistically. How am I doing? How do I feel? Do I actually feel right now that, you know, I want to make a change within myself? Or is this a knock in the door of changing career or of changing something within myself? Is it, you know, my emotions, how I process things, how I take pauses? Do I even know right now if I'm okay with how I'm living life? There's so many of my clients that are actually moved, sold, went to a simpler life. Some actually upgraded. Some actually just they decided to live around for 5 years. There's been so many changes. And this is a perfect moment to make a conscious pause, check within the internal world, so then you can design intentionally the external world, because they're interdependent. Otherwise, we just do the external, life in the external, but then we get lost in it, and then we just lose the flavor of it, right? It's like, what am I doing? It's just like fast forward, but how do I want to be living my life? What's important to me right now? What do I value right now? How is it that I want to be living my life? And that's why I mentioned constantly, you know, life by design, but we can't forget the intention and the purpose of it. So now what has changed in your life? What do you value more? And from there, you can take that type of decisions and able to know, where do you go from now? Where are you at right now? Because it's important to ask ourselves, where am I now? In different places and different areas of my life, where am I now? So I can know, where do I want to go then from now on? And in what ways? And how do I want to now have my relationships? How do I want to spend money? And what do I want to invest due to what's important right now? We can't continue to live the way that we were living before. It's important to make that reset, and able to go forward with new ways. If it's a new type of world and society and ways, then we must upgrade ourselves as well. So
I think that's an extremely powerful message. And one of the things that just kind of gleaned out when you were saying that, Grace, was we've gone through things like this together, and we've seen other people go through this. But I think it's really important for you not to view, if your business has to shut down, that it's a failure.
Correct.
This was outside of your control. And it's so important to give yourself, permission and forgiveness of that happening to you. It seems silly. Why would I need to give myself forgiveness? Because so many times people will see, especially when their psychology is based on success, which success is maybe, measured in money or wealth. it's so important because life is a journey, right? Life experiences are a journey. When you identify with something that's you, and now it can't continue, it's like its life is over. Giving yourself that insight to say it's okay. I'm giving myself permission to not blame myself. This was something out of my control, and I have a gift. You know, Grace reminds me of this all the time. She's like, you have a God-given gift. Use it. Do not suppress it. Grow it, because that's our passion. I mean, when you're given a gift, why would you want to smolder it? You know, innovation, ideas, especially with business owners. I know you're thinking about new ideas all the time. And if you just kind of, well, like Grace says, that wide vision, or you take just a step back and to take it all in, there's probably more opportunity than you've ever realized. And human emotion is attached to those things. And people are trying to create their success, and they need the gurus that are willing to take the risk to create that. So don't give up on yourself. Please forgive yourself and give yourself permission to, inspire yourself again, because you will create if you allow yourself. And success is a matter of the personal idea of what success is. But having that one-on-one relationship of what you really have to survive, not what you tell yourself that you have to survive. But if you had to break it all down, what would it take? Is it downsizing? We've had clients that have downsized. They sold their home in California, moved to the Midwest, and paid cash for it and have money in the bank. Well, that's a win-win, but you got to live there if that's what you really wanted. There are strategies and ideas that can actually create optimism. And don't do this alone. I would say absolutely talk to a professional, whether it's, working with Grace as a coach that could actually help, unwrap the unravelable. And with us, we're dealing with money. It's the biggest discussion on the planet. We goal ourselves, we plan ourselves, we create life experience for us, and we have expectations for ourselves. Having a better relationship with money deserves to have a financial professional that can create even more success and literally widen your vision about what your opportunities are. So I hope this was helpful. And I know, Katie, you probably have some closing words, but I loved it. Yes. We love your feedback.
Yes, thank you so much. I think those were great last words. Thank you, Grace, for being here. Thank you to our listeners. Please use the link in the chat, and there'll be a survey that will pop up if you hold on for a minute, or you'll get an email to you tomorrow. But to set up your complimentary consultation and to go through the money coaching process and get a copy of Elisabeth's book, Wealth by Design, if you or someone you know who could benefit from this as well, we did record it, so please let us know. We'd love to get you a copy of the recording of tonight's chat and some more information about the coaching process. So thank you.
And we can stay, Katie, you can stay on for a second, so if they need a chance to ask a question or pull the link. But, if you want to talk to Grace as well, and this is the first time you're hearing that kind of knowledge, which is so powerful, and you want to reach out to her, please just let us know, because we would love to put you in contact with Grace. She's incredibly sought out for, not just in the United States, but around the world. And I feel so blessed and honored to call her a friend, and also a personal and business coach for me, because life isn't easy. We need someone to help us process it. And, I give Grace so much credit and just inspiration from her, because she has knowledge way beyond you could imagine. And it's the simplicity of it. The whole goal is to make it simple for you to implement. And I can't express that enough, what a gift that has been in my life. And I know it would be for you all too. If you are also interested in future Fireside Chats, please let us know, because we would love to keep you on that list of contacts so that we can invite you for future. And, by all means, conversation never hurt anyone. If you want to have an intimate conversation with myself or Katie or Grace, that's where it starts. It doesn't hurt. You can be vulnerable a little bit, but sometimes vulnerable creates a lot of success and happiness for you.
Definitely.
Any other questions? Everybody good?
Oh, I see.
So Katie just left. All right, so we will say good night. I hope you all have a great evening, and thank you so much again, Grace, for being here.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
Yeah. Take care. Bye-bye.
The information provided in this show is for informational and educational purposes only. This show is not investment advice, nor is it intended to address the financial needs of any particular viewer. The opinions expressed on this show are not intended to be an endorsement of any particular investment strategy or service of any other kind. You must make an independent decision regarding investments or strategies mentioned throughout the show. Before acting on information in this show, you should consider whether it is suitable for your particular situation and strongly consider seeking advice from a financial advisor.